Welcome to Narrative Strokes. I've only been the janitor here for about a week, but I already know this place like the back of my hand. That's the kind of thing you learn fast when your whole job is to clean every hallway, every classroom, every hidden corner the kids think they can use to sneak a smoke. The high school isn't that big, 2 main floors, a gym, a cafeteria, and a few offices stacked together like an afterthought. That's all. The head custodian had showed me every part of the school while explaining my duties. But then, last night, I saw a new stairwell. It was late, well past 10. Everyone had gone home hours ago. I was wheeling my mop bucket when I noticed a door wedged between 2 trophy cases. A plain metal door with no label. It wasn't locked, and when I opened it, I felt a draft of cold air rise up from the darkness below. The problem is, I'd been down that hallway 5 nights in a row, and I swear to God that door hadn't been there before. I told myself not to go down there. I even closed the door, wheeled my mop bucket past it, and tried to pretend it wasn't there. But the damn thing nagged at me. A door I could have sworn didn't exist a day ago, now sitting wide open like it was daring me. Curiosity won. It always does. I flicked on my flashlight and stepped inside. The door swung shut behind me with a hollow metallic thud, and the sound echoed down the stairwell. The concrete steps looked new, smooth, clean, like no one had walked them yet. The air smelled different down there too, not the usual mold and dust basement smell. Sterile, cold, like a hospital corridor that had been scrubbed with chemicals until every trace of life was gone. At the bottom of the stairs, I found a hallway. It didn't look like part of the school. The floor was seamless, a polished gray material that gleamed even under the weak beam of my flashlight. The walls were smooth and white, with embedded strips of pale blue light that hummed faintly. It reminded me of an office building that hadn't been finished yet. The first door I passed was labeled Room 3B. The letters were etched into a steel plate, but the style wasn't anything I recognized. Sharp angles, extra strokes that didn't belong in the alphabet. Inside was a classroom, or at least something pretending to be. Rows of desks, a chalkboard, even a teacher's podium. But the chalkboard was filled edge to edge with equations. Not normal math either. The numbers stretched into symbols I didn't recognize, twisting loops that bent into themselves, lines that looked more like circuitry than arithmetic. And the diagrams? Pinned along the walls were sheets of anatomy drawings. At first glance, they looked like human skeletons, but the longer I stared, the less sense they made. Rib cages that branched into 3, skulls with extra cavities, arms with too many joints. Some were halfway between human and something else, like whoever drew them had been trying to redesign us. I felt sick. My flashlight flickered, and in that split second of darkness, I swear I heard movement in the room, like desks dragging across the floor. But when the light came back, everything was still. I backed out slowly, leaving the door half open. The second room was worse. It wasn't marked with a number at all, just a blank steel plate where a label should have been. When I pushed the door open, the smell hit me first. Not the sharp chemical sterility of the hallway, but something biological. Damp, earthy, faintly sweet, like cut grass that had been left in the sun too long. Inside, the desks were circled around a single table in the middle, as if a class had gathered there for a dissection. On the table lay something stretched beneath glass, It looked vaguely human at first glance. Torso, limbs, a head, but none of it fit together correctly. The bones were too thin, the joints bent the wrong way, and the skin was translucent, showing veins that pulsed sluggishly as if the thing was still alive. Pinned on the walls were diagrams, just like the last room, but these weren't skeletal drawings. These were instructions. Arrows pointing to the creature's chest cavity, symbols marking organs that didn't exist in humans, notes scribbled in a language I couldn't read, but they had readings of oxygen percentages, temperature ranges, metabolic rates. As I stepped closer, my flashlight beam caught on something scratched into the glass cover. A word, carved clumsily, as though by someone desperate to leave a mark. Help. I staggered back, heart hammering, and that's when I noticed the hum. Low at first, like background noise I'd been ignoring, but rising the longer I stood there. A mechanical hum laced with a high-pitched tone that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The glass covering the body fogged for a second, like something exhaled inside it. That was enough. I bolted out of the room, slamming the door shut behind me, and pressed my back to the cold wall of the hallway. But the hum didn't stop. It followed me down the corridor. I should have left right then, walked back up those spotless stairs, closed the door, and told myself I was overtired. But my feet didn't listen. The hallway stretched on, the pale lights flickering overhead like they were guiding me forward. The third door stood slightly open, a soft glow spilling into the corridor. My hand shook as I pushed it the rest of the way. This room was smaller, tighter. No desks, no diagrams on the walls, just a bank of filing cabinets along one side and a single computer screen glowing faintly in the corner. I stepped closer. The screen showed a roster. Names, ages, birth dates, all of them familiar. They were the students upstairs. Every single one of them had a profile. Some were tagged with terms I didn't understand. Phase 1 complete. Cognitive adjustment scheduled. Sample collection pending. A few names had been crossed out with thick black lines. Those students, I knew them too. They'd been missing classes lately. One was in the hospital, or that's what the teachers told the others. I clicked down the list, my pulse pounding in my ears, until I saw my own name in a separate folder. Staff subjects. The entry was brief, but the words made my stomach drop. Custodial integration, observation, curiosity levels higher than baseline, intervention recommended. As I stared at the text, the cursor blinked, and a new line appeared on its own. Subject present, proceed to phase 2. The computer emitted a sharp tone, the same hum I'd heard in the second room, only louder, angrier. I spun around and the filing cabinets rattled like something inside them was struggling to get out. I left and went straight home and sat in the dark, staring into the void. The word integration wouldn't leave my head. The next day I told myself I'll avoid that part of the school altogether. Pretend I never saw the door, do my job, collect my paycheck, and keep my mouth shut. But as I was taking trash bags out after lunch, I saw something that made my blood run cold. 2 teachers, Mr. Hawthorne from chemistry and Miss Jacobs from history, were walking down the east wing together. Nothing unusual there, except they weren't heading for the lounge or the parking lot. They were heading for that door. I froze, half hidden behind my trash cart, and watched as they opened it without hesitation. No fumbling for keys, no confusion. They went down the stairs like they'd done it 100 times before. The door shut behind them. I waited. Minutes dragged on. Then finally, I saw them return. Only something was off. Miss Jacobs glanced at me as they passed. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused, like she was looking through me instead of at me. Mr. Hawthorne was smiling faintly, but it wasn't his smile. It was too wide, stretched too long. Neither of them said a word. They just walked by and headed back toward their classrooms. When I worked up the courage to check the door, it was gone. Just a blank wall between the trophy cases. That night, I didn't even pretend to clean. I just lingered in the hallways, mop in hand, waiting. At exactly 9:14, 3 teachers I recognized, Mr. Blakely from math, Miss Cortes from biology, and the vice principal himself, drifted down the stairwell like they'd done it 1,000 times. They didn't talk, they didn't even look at one another, just straight down. I followed, keeping my distance. The basement door was there again. No hesitation this time. Miss Cortes swiped something across the knob and it clicked open. All 3 of them disappeared inside. When I hurried up behind them, the door had sealed itself again. Smooth concrete wall, as though I'd imagined the whole thing. I stood there, breathing hard. Then I heard it, muffled voices. No, not voices, something more like vibrations, a sound you don't so much hear as feel along your bones. I pressed my ear against the wall and my blood ran cold. They weren't speaking English. It wasn't even close. The sounds were guttural, broken with clicks and pulses, too precise and patterned to be nonsense. And beneath it all, the unmistakable sound of machinery, a low, thrumming hum that shook through the concrete. When the vibration stopped, the footsteps returned. I barely had time to dart behind the boiler before the door reappeared, opening as if nothing had happened. The teachers filed out silently, eyes glassy, movements stiff and mechanical. I waited until they were gone. Then I checked the wall. Just as before, seamless. Except this time, faintly etched into the concrete, I saw something new. A symbol. 3 interlocking circles, each marked with tiny notches around the edges like a clock face. It hadn't been there before, or maybe it only revealed itself after whatever ritual they'd performed. I touched it, and for the briefest second, the wall breathed under my palm. I decided to return the next night, fully prepared, flashlight, bolt cutters, and a crowbar tucked under my jacket. I waited until the last of the staff had cleared out and the school settled into its hollow silence. My nerves were so strung out, I nearly bolted when the pipes groaned. But I forced myself to the basement. The symbol was still there, carved into the concrete like it had always belonged. My fingers traced the interlocking circles, and again I felt that awful give under the surface, like pressing against skin instead of stone. I pressed harder. The wall shivered, then opened. It didn't swing like a door. It just peeled back in layers, folding itself away until a passage yawned before me. I expected the same hallway I had seen before. I expected the flickering blue lights, the smooth floors, the familiar chill in the air. I was wrong. The basement had changed. The floor wasn't floor at all. It looked like concrete, but the texture gave slightly, as if I were walking on cartilage. Every step sank with a soft, wet crunch that made my stomach twist. The corridor stretched endlessly, slick and dark, reflecting the red glow that pulsed from the walls. The air was thick, metallic, and almost wet, pressing against my lungs. The walls themselves seemed alive, veined with faintly glowing lines that pulsed like veins. Every surface shivered subtly, as if the building itself were breathing. The first room I had seen, the one with the equations, was gone. Instead, there were tall columns of glass tanks, each filled with a murky fluid and strange writhing forms that twisted inside, partially human, partially something else. The hum that had been faint before now filled my chest, vibrating through every bone, every nerve ending. And the deeper I went, the clearer I heard it. The teachers' voices. The corridor opened into a chamber, and I dropped flat to the ground, heart hammering. They were all there, at least a dozen teachers, standing in a circle around something. At first I thought it was a machine, all wires and steel. But the longer I stared, the more I realized it wasn't built. It was grown. The metal pulsed like flesh, cords twitching like tendons, every few seconds releasing a tremor that rattled the chamber. The teachers swayed in unison, whispering their impossible language, and then the machine shifted. Something inside it turned, slowly, as if waking, and it looked at me, not with eyes, but I knew, with a gut-deep certainty, it had seen me. The chanting stopped. Every teacher's head snapped toward the entrance, and I realized with ice in my veins that I wasn't hidden at all. I froze. Every head in the room turned toward me, all at once. Teachers I recognized, or thought I did, stood motionless, faces pale and unblinking. I tried to back away, but my legs refused to obey. My chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down on me. The biology instructor, Miss Cortez, stepped closer. But her walk, it wasn't right. Too smooth, too precise. When she spoke, the words didn't come from her mouth. They reverberated directly in my skull. "You've seen what you should not." I wanted to stammer out that I was just the janitor, that I hadn't meant to intrude, but the sound of my own voice seemed to vanish before it reached her ears. Around me, the other teachers started moving their hands in strange patterns, drawing shapes in the air. Glowing lines lingered a moment before fading, leaving faint ghost trails that made my stomach twist. My head spun, heart hammering. I don't understand," I managed to whisper. Miss Cortez tilted her head, the movement almost unnatural. "Custodian, cleaner of mess, you will clean this too." Her eyes shimmered like liquid metal. And then I saw it, the blackboard behind her rippling, the equations rearranging themselves until they formed the outline of something alien. Tall, skeletal, limbs bending in ways that made my skin crawl. I blinked, and the outline shuddered, twitching like it was alive. I stumbled back. The other teachers closed in, surrounding me, moving in perfect unison. And then they spoke, all of them at once. Their voices merged into a single, unearthly tone that vibrated inside my skull. "Join us, or feed it." I swallowed hard, chest tight. My mind screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. The basement had already swallowed me whole. I spun around and bolted for the door, heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. My flashlight beam bounced wildly across the walls, catching the pale, pulsing surfaces of the hallway. But the door, my exit, wasn't there. The wall where it should have been stretched smooth and unbroken. My mind screamed at me, "No, no, no!" The teachers didn't move, but somehow I knew they were watching. The hum in the walls grew louder, vibrating through my bones, and the floor beneath me seemed to shift slightly, like the basement itself was breathing, alive and aware of me. I scrambled along the corridor, hands brushing against walls that pulsed under my fingers. The concrete felt wrong, soft, pliant, almost warm. It twisted slightly, narrowing the hallway, guiding me somewhere. Ahead, a chamber opened. Red light spilled out in waves. I stumbled inside, and the sight stole my breath. The alien structure. It was impossible. A vast network of organic machinery filled the room. Tubes and cords ran through what looked like tissue, writhing and twisting, forming a lattice that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. And at the center, something was awake. It didn't have eyes, not in any human sense, but I could feel it seeing me. A presence, vast and calculating, like it understood me without words. A voice. No, not a voice. More like a pressure in my mind entered me.
"You were expected."
I fell to my knees, shaking. I don't belong here," I tried to shout, but the sound was swallowed by the hum.
"Belonging is irrelevant."
I felt pulled. Every thought, every cell in my body was tugged towards the core of that structure. I could see myself inside it, or a version of myself, blurred, twitching, shifting, as if the alien presence was inspecting me, measuring me, folding me into its equations. The teachers circled closer, their faces calm, obedient. My limbs felt heavier. My vision tunneled. Panic clawed at my mind, but the entity's pressure was stronger, analyzing, probing, waiting. And then a thought, not mine, slipped in.
Integration.
It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a choice. It was a certainty. I screamed, and the basement hummed in response, the walls contracting around me, guiding me forward. My hands brushed the organic surface, sticky and alive. I could feel it, thinking, calculating, rewriting. And I knew, in the deepest part of myself, that by the time I escaped, or tried to, whatever I was, whatever I would become, had already begun. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, then comment down below and let me know what you think. I'll see you next time with another story. Until then, keep smiling and don't forget to like and subscribe.